Acha, where all you have to share?
Homemade, yeah.
Because it was really nice summer now. Irrigation and everything. Come one night and I'll tell you what flavor they're all who like it. This is all automated, right? Something can trip also.
Mataji, although this is not my house, but please take a seat. on behalf of my friend, look, you can sit on the chair, you can sit on here, you can sit. No, not there because my husband is sitting there.
I sit here, thank you.
I'm terrible, so pushy. It's not for me, it's not for me, it's for my friend.
And this one, what's the name? So it will be remain recorded on YouTube, no? It will remain recorded.
I don't know. It will be first time.
No idea.
I better know. Oh, because when she will not change, she will need to cover the t-shirt and jeans. Last
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jai Namacharya Das Thakur Ki Jai Param Sadhal Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Saraswati Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopida Shama Kunda Radha Kudi Gopradhan Ki Jai Sri Vrindavan Ki Jai Navadhan Ki Jai Ganga Jamuna Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samavata Bhakta-vrinda Ki Jai Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bol All glories to Sam Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna All glories to Shri Guru Shri Guru all glories to Shri Prabhupada.
Make a quick announcement. Hare Krishna everyone, thank you all for coming. Much appreciated. Maharaj, thank you very much. Today's program we would like to dedicate to Prana Prabhu. Our family has been closely associated with him from schooling days, and this associated his influences quite a bit. So our prayers are with him, his family, and this whole program we would like to dedicate to him. So that's all from our perspective. Hare Krishna. Vishnu Badai, Krishna Bhaskavadai, Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamani, Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pratana Nana Visesha Shunyavadi Pastrachadesha Tadane, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Gaur Bhakta-vrinda, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. So this is a presentation of Brihad Bhagavatamrita in the ISKCON or BBT publication. It's in 3 parts, I think, isn't it? Anyway, it's the first part. Actually, it's 2 parts, but the second part is very big, so they kind of divided into 2 parts. But the people here today probably won't be there tomorrow. So maybe we can just do the first part and then that's cut it there, and then because it's two separate stories actually. But then I don't know what to do about the people the other days because you know I'm going to divide the second story into 2 parts, 3 parts, and they'll come in the middle of the story probably. People. But anyway, this I'll try to finish today. The first part. It's called establishing the essence of mercy. What it really means is which person gets the most mercy from Krishna, or Supreme Lord? That's the basic question that's answered in this section. It's a big work, so actually that's just everything's just summarized. You know, I just cut a lot of things out. First, we have Mangalachara, and that is prayers of auspiciousness. There's many prayers at the very beginning. He offers respects to the Supreme Lord. Here, he presents the fact that the Lord actually comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he realizes the highest prema, the love residing eternally in the gopis. So in other words, he's explaining that Lord Chaitanya is in the mood of the gopis, and he's presenting that love to the people of Kali Yuga. So he offers his respect to that form of the Lord who's most merciful by presenting this highest love to the people of the world. So right there we got the theme of the highest prema, that is the love of the gopis, which is the conclusion of the whole work. Not only this section, but the other part of the work also. So actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Lord, but he manifests the prema of the gopis. In other words, he takes the role of the devotee, and he experiences the love of the devotee in the form of the gopis' love, in order that he can reveal that to the material world. So he's actually Supreme Lord with the mood of the gopis, love of the gopis. So we often see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is called Bhakta Avatar. He is the Lord who manifests as a devotee. Rather than identifying himself as Supreme Lord, he identifies himself as devotee of the Lord, or actually as Radha. Okay, so through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the people of Kali Yuga can begin to understand and realize both the love of the gopis and the Lord's love of the gopis, both the gopis themselves and their type of love, and how the Lord is attracted to the gopis. Both things can be understood through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, by proving the excellence of the gopis' love, then we also can understand the excellence, the highest excellence of Krishna's love. Since the gopis are the most devoted, from that we can also understand the excellence of Krishna, how he responds to them. Okay, so if we can understand the gopis' love, we can understand the Lord's love for them, basically. So this is the whole purpose of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, to communicate that love. So, of course we know that in our temples, in the center we usually have Radha Krishna. So this is because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is presenting Radha Krishna to the people of Kali Yuga. And we chant Hare Krishna, and the meaning is we're addressing Radha to give us the mercy of Krishna. So right in even Harinam, we're actually addressing Radha and Krishna. So, in other words, through Harinam, we're also realizing Radha and Krishna and their love. So, there's different chapters of this first section, first part of the work, and it goes through different places. So, first is mercy on the earth. Who gets the mercy on earth? But there's at the beginning it says the Mangalacharana, and there's glorification of Lord Chaitanya, we just had, and then there's the glorification of Radha, glorification of Vrindavan, glorification of Jamuna, glorification of Govardhan, and of Prem Bhakti, and the holy name. So actually it's all inclusive, and it's, let's say, it includes all the elements of what Lord Chaitanya is teaching, Radha, Krishna, Vrindavan, and Bhakti, and Harinam. And so all these are glorified at the very beginning of the work. So it is a very Gaudiya-oriented work. So in the story, we have a story within a story within a story, basically speaking. It starts out with Jaimini speaking to Janamajaya, the son of Parikshit. So apparently he recited the whole Mahabharata to Janamajaya, the son of Parikshit. There is in India still something called the Jaimini Bharata. I think it's quite famous in Maharashtra. Any Marathis here? Any from Maharashtra? Yeah, I think it's the Jaimini Bharata. It's sometimes quoted. So maybe that's his work that is mentioned here. He's very famous because he was the person given charge of the Samveda. Vyasadeva divided the Vedas into 4 parts, and he was put in charge of the Samveda to carry it on. And it's also the best of the 4 Vedas, as Bhagavad Gita also says when it says, of the Vedas, I'm the Samveda. So he understood the essence of the Vedas and taught the path of bhakti. But what he's most famous is for karma. Because in the Karma Kanda section, there's lots of sacrifices for going to Svargaloka, and Jaimini became the main proponent of the Karma Kanda philosophy, Karma Mimamsa philosophy. He's very famous for that. So he also is very prominent in Karma Kanda. But here it's mentioned he's actually a great devotee of the Lord. So it's only under the Lord's inspiration and order that he glorifies Karma Kanda, but actually he's a great devotee. And he also says he glorified Jagannath eloquently, so I don't know what he's referring to there, how he's glorified Jagannath. Maybe he's wrote some stotras to Jagannath, something like that. So, he is the speaker. Janamajaya is famous because he did a snake sacrifice. He wanted to kill all the snakes because the snake killed his father, so he was famous for doing that. So here he's actually recovered from that sort of anger, and he listened to the Mahabharata from Jaimini. Jaimini begins to relate a conversation between Parikshit and his mother Uttara. So we have Jaimini talking to Janamajaya, and then Jaimini relates a conversation of Parikshit and his mother Uttara. So then it's Uttara that begins to speak to Parikshit and ask some questions, and then Parikshit begins replying, and then he tells a story, several stories. So it's a story within a story within a story. So Uttara says, "My dear son, please extract the essence of what Sukadeva has taught you and quickly reveal it to me, as if churning the nectar of immortality from the ocean of milk." So you take the very essence of Sukadeva's teachings in the Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is the famous work of Sukadeva, and he taught that to Parikshit. So his mother Uttara is asking Parikshit, "Now you tell me the essence of the Bhagavatam. What is the final conclusion of Bhagavatam?" So then he begins to tell a whole long story involving Narada Muni. So there was a group of exalted sages at Prayag, which is considered a very sacred pilgrimage site. And they were bathing in the water at Prayag in the month of Magh, and it's also very famous in the scriptures. If you bathe in the in the holy tirtha at Prayag in the month of Magh, you get lots of benefits, lots of punyas. So they had taken their bath, and they were seated in front of the Madhava deity. There's a famous deity there, a Vishnu deity at Prayag. Still there. I think this is the deity there. So they were all very happy, satisfied, and they began praising each other. "You're the best recipient of the Lord's mercy. You got most of Krishna's mercy," and they're telling each other this praise. Then everyone saw a wealthy brahmana come along, and he opened his box, and there was a shalagram, and he began worshiping the shalagram, and then he offered food to the shalagram, and he began distributing prasadam to everyone. So everyone was very impressed and began to praise him. And Narada Muni saw this, so they said, okay, you have received the greatest mercy of Krishna. You're such a great devotee, because he'd used all of his wealth for worshipping the Lord. So the brahmana, of course, was a little upset by that. He says, no, I'm not a great devotee. He says, there's a king. His worship is much better, because he has all the wealth of the kingdom, and he spends that on the deity. So then he said, you should go see him. He's the best devotee, recipient of the Lord's mercy. So Narada goes to the local king, and much wealthier. He has temples, and many temples, and particularly a deity of Vishnu. And he was a great devotee. Citizens were devotees. And they were all very happy. So Narada began to praise the king. You're the best recipient of the Lord's mercy. And the king also said, no, I'm not the recipient of the Lord's mercy. He says, well, look, I have a temporary body, I have limited wealth. If you want to see real worship of the Lord, you go to the Devatas. Devatas, they live for so long, they got unlimited wealth. In fact, they're the ones that give us the wealth. So they're the persons who are the greatest recipients of mercy, because they can really worship the Supreme Lord. That's why we're worshiping them, because they're much greater. So if you really want to see the recipients of the Lord's mercy, you have to see the Devatas. So they are fixed in goodness, they're free from sin, they're free from distress, they're always happy, they act and travel however they like, they can go anywhere, they give blessings by granting whatever the devotees desire. And of all of them, Indra is the leader, he's the king, he gets the most mercy. And Vishnu was always there in the form of Vamanadev, and he actually became the younger brother of Indra. So therefore, Indra must be the greatest recipient of the Lord's mercy. How can anyone be the older brother of the Supreme Lord? Because the Lord is very merciful. So these are logical arguments. Narada goes to Svargaloka. Narada Muni, of course, can travel anywhere. He's a Shaktivesh avatar of the Lord. He's got an eternal body. And by will, he can just go anywhere within the universe or outside the universe. He's not restricted. And it doesn't take him any time also. He can do it instantly. So he went to Svargaloka, just by his mind, travels. He says, I want to go to Svargaloka. He goes there and he's there. So he saw the Lord there, and he saw the Devatas there. And he was very impressed, because the Lord was there, and Indra was worshipping him. So Narada Muni began to praise Indra, and say, you're the greatest recipient of the Lord's mercy, because the Lord has become your younger brother, and he accepts all your worship, and he protects you, etc. So you're getting a lot of mercy. But then Indra replies, no, that's not so. I'm not really safe. The demons come up here and like Bali, and they kick me out of my kingdom. The Devatas are subject to rivalry. The Devatas fight among themselves. We see all sorts of stories, how one Devata insults the other, one curses the other, like Brihaspati and others, and he's the priest, and the others are fighting, so it's not so peaceful after all. And we see that the Lord's not so merciful, because he took the Sudharma hall, he took the Parijata from heaven, and Indra fought with him. He stopped the worship of Indra in the Govardhan Puja. He burned down the Kandava forest, which is Indra's forest. So how can the Lord be merciful if he's doing all these things against Indra? And he's not even there all the time in Svargaloka. He disappears sometimes, and we don't know where he's gone. He comes there, accepts the worship, then he disappears. So he's not always there. So we're not the greatest recipients of the Lord's mercy. He says sometimes he's in Ramapriya. That's a Vaikuntha within the universe. Actually, during one of the Manvantara periods, Vaikuntha made a planet called Vaikuntha within the universe for his mother. So there's a Vaikuntha planet within the universe. So sometimes the Lord goes there. Sometimes he goes to Dhruvaloka because there Prahlada, Dhruva's there, and he goes to see him. Sometimes he's in Svetadvipa on the Bhumandala, like that. And of course, he goes to different places like Gokul and Dwarka, Mathur, Indraprastha, etc. So the Lord's not always in Svargaloka. Right? He's in the top there, that's the Vaikuntha in the material world. He's down in Dhruvaloka, he's in Svetadvip, and plus he's on Bhumandala within Gokul and Dwarka and Indraprastha. So the Lord's not always in Svarga. So Indra says, Brahma is a better recipient of the mercy of the Lord, because he's the son of Vishnu. Indra is only the elder brother of Vishnu, but Brahma is the son of Vishnu because he comes out of Vishnu's navel. So Brahma is much greater, and he creates and destroys the universe. And 14 Indras are there within one day of Brahma. So obviously Brahma is much greater. And on Brahmaloka, the Mahapurusha form of Vishnu is always present there. So Brahma is a greater recipient of the mercy of the Lord. And he's even non-different from Vishnu. Yeah, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, so they're all like equal. So he's much, much greater than Indra. So Narada Muni goes off to Brahmaloka. And there he sees a thousand-headed form of the Mahapurusha, Vishnu, accepting sacrifice, offerings and sacrifice. So Narada Muni begins to praise Brahma as having the highest place. The Lord is there constantly. He's getting the most mercy of the Lord, etc. But then Brahma also rejects the praise. I'm not equal to the Lord at all. I'm just a servant of the Lord. I'm a jiva. I'm subject to Maya. For instance, he tried to bewilder Krishna and then took away all the cows and the cow herds, always created offense for Krishna and whatever. So I'm subject to Maya also. I think I'm the creator. And I also fear destruction of my planet. So even though I live for 100 years, I'm always thinking, well, after 100 years, then I'm going to die also. So I'm not completely free of fear. And then I worship the Lord for liberation. I want to get out of this material body. So I'm not the greatest recipient of mercy because I'm not the most comfortable situation. I'm subject to destruction also. And I've given benedictions to Hrandikasipu, to Ravana, and other demons. And I know I've become an offender to the Lord by that. So if I'm an offender, I cannot be getting the greatest mercy from the Lord. So how can you say that, praise me and say I'm the greatest person, since I offend the Lord in so many ways? So the Lord comes and he's there and he accepts all these offerings. It's not out of affection, but he does it out of duty. Because the Vedas say, the Lord should accept the sacrifice, therefore the Lord accepts it, but actually it's not out of affection. So, in this way, he's not only offended other forms of the Lord, he's directly offended Krishna, and even the Devatas appointed by Brahma, they also offend the Lord, like Indra, Yama, Kuvera, they offend the Lord. Indra attacked Govardhan Hill with his water. He also tried to prevent Krishna from taking the Parijata. Yamaraj took Sandapani Muni's son of his guru, and so Krishna had to come down and get his son back. Shankachuta was a follower of Kuvera, and then he offended the Lord by trying to take the gopis away. Varuna, he stole Krishna's father and put him in his place down below the water, and Krishna had to come and get him. So it says all the Devatas that I appoint, they also offend the Lord. So that reflects on Brahma. So then Brahma says, how can I be the recipient of the Lord's mercy? It's not true. So he said, Shiva's a greater recipient of the Lord's mercy. So Shiva's always dedicated to the Lord's feet. He's detached. He awards liberation, whereas Brahma says, I'm attached to my position. So Shiva's completely detached, and he gets to award liberation, whereas Brahma has to pray for liberation.
So Shiva gives liberation. So he's got great power from the Supreme Lord. And even the Lord worships Shiva. We see places where the Lord is worshipping Shiva. He has an abode beyond the universe. He has Kailash, of course, within the universe, but beyond the universe he has an abode. Brahma's abode is in the universe, whereas Shiva is above the universe. So he must be a much greater devotee. So then Narada Muni goes to Shiva Loka beyond the material worlds. He's gone up from, Earth planet, then he went to Svarga Loka, then he went to Brahma Loka, and he goes beyond the material world, outside the material world. So he goes to Shiva Loka. And there he saw Shiva dancing and doing kirtan. So Narada praises Shiva that you're the greatest recipient of the Lord's mercy because you're even greater than Brahma and you're beyond the material world except for your word liberation, etc. There's Shiva there. Yeah. So Shiva immediately says, no, that's not true. So he says, I desire the mercy of the Lord's servants also. They're much greater persons than me, and much greater devotees. It was said that, Narada Muni said that, okay, even the Lord worships Shiva, but then he explains here, this is the pastime of the Lord taking benedictions from Lord Shiva, because actually it's not so. One example of that, he worshipped Shiva and he got Samba as his son. That's a story told in Mahabharata. But it's just not true actually. The Lord doesn't have to worship anyone. So he's just doing this as a pastime to glorify Shiva. So it's not factual. And according to another story, Vishnu worshipped Shiva to get the Sudarshan chakra, like that. So, but it says these are not real. This is the pastime of the Lord. And Shiva says he commits offense because he gives benedictions which become harmful for everyone. So Banasur got a benediction, he would be defeated by someone equal to Shiva. And then Banasur had to be defeated by Krishna ultimately. So, of course, Krishna was very merciful, and later he made Banasura an associate of Shiva, and he chopped off all of his 1,000 arms except 4. So he had 4 arms, and then he became a servant of Shiva. But anyway, the Lord had to intervene in this whole pastime because of Shiva giving benedictions that cause problems for everyone. So he gives these benedictions which are faulty and ultimately destroy the demons. So the Sudakshana story is told in the Bhagavatam. He wanted to avenge his father's death at Kasi, and so he worshipped Shiva to avenge the killing of his father. So Shiva came and gave him a benediction that he could produce a fire that could destroy anyone who did not respect Brahmanas. So finally, of course, he used that weapon, but the Sudarshan came and destroyed Kasi and Sudakshana also because he attacked Krishna, who respects Brahmanas, so his boon backfired like that. But the benediction was given by Shiva, so Shiva caused problem for Krishna that way. So how could I get the mercy of the Lord? So when the fight for the Prahlada was there, Shiva was on Indra's side there also. So he said, how can I get the mercy of the Lord if I fight with him? And also when Aniruddha stole Usha and others, he was also, in that time, he was on the wrong side. Shiva says, I'm influenced by Ahankara. So Shiva is famous because he's in charge of Ahankara. He is the presiding deity of false ego. He's in charge of Tamagun. And Shiva goes ordered by the Lord to produce Mayavad philosophy. So Mayavad philosophy is an offense to the Lord. So, I'm doing things which are offensive to the Lord, so how can I be getting his mercy for that? And Shiva says, yeah, I bestow liberation, but the Vaishnavas think it's terrible. They reject it completely and they criticize it. So how can that be a blessing to, to bestow liberation on anyone? Because it's cursed by the devotees. They don't like it.
So he says, the people of Vaikuntha, they're the best recipients of the Lord's mercy. They can travel anywhere, inside or outside the universe, and distribute mercy. They see the Lord at all times. They have Satchidananda bodies. But generally they prefer to stay with the Lord in Vaikuntha. So he says, they're the best. But then he says, actually, you should go and see a devotee like Prahlada. He's the greatest devotee. He doesn't even want liberation. When he was asked by Nrsimhadev, he said, I don't want liberation. And even Bali and his son Bhanu, who were demons, got benedictions because they were related to Prahlada. So he says, you go see Prahlada, he's on Sutala Loka. So, of course, Narada Muni was above the universe, outside the universe. And he said, now you go into the universe, you go down to Sutala Loka, which is below, actually below. See, it's way down there. Bhuloka is where we live, and then we got Atala, Vitala, Sutala, lower planetary systems. And actually, Narada Muni got up to such a loka, then he went up to Shiva Loka beyond the universe, and then he went back down to Sutala Loka. And there was Prahlada. He doesn't care about liberation or Vaikuntha or anything. So chapter 4 describes the devotee of the Lord, Prahlada, as the greatest recipient of the Lord's mercy. So Narada Muni goes to Sutala and praises Prahlada. And he says how Prahlada pacified the Lord because even the Devatas and Brahma and even Lakshmi couldn't pacify Nrsimhadev, but Prahlada could do it very easily. So the Lord must be very merciful to him. He must have great affection for him. So, and Prahlada, of course, showed his great devotion because he refused even Vaikuntha. And he requested only bhakti. So, he's a very, very great devotee of the Lord. But then Prahlada refuses that praise. Says, everything you mention is not a symptom of the Lord's mercy. Actually, I only remember the Lord when I'm put in trouble. Now, Prahlada is famous for smarnam. Always remembering the Lord. Actually, I only remember the Lord because I'm in trouble. That's when I remember the Lord. And real service, a real mercy is to see engagement. If you always got engagement in the Lord's service, such as Hanuman, that's real mercy. Just because I got Sutala Loka to rule, that doesn't mean it's a sign of the Lord's mercy. Service to the Lord is higher. And he even says, my understanding of the Lord is contaminated with dry logic of the demons. So generally demons, when they get a little philosophical, what do? They talk about you're not the body and jnana and things like that. So I'm also contaminated by this jnana. So my bhakti is mixed with jnana. This jnana Mr. Bhakti, he says. So actually I'm not the best devotee. And the Lord is not always here. Of course, we see the story that the Vamana stays as the gatekeeper. He's not always here. Sometimes he comes, sometimes he disappears. So he's not always here either. So how can I be considered the greatest devotee? Yes, Hanuman is the greatest devotee. Because he always sees and serves the Lord at all times. And of course he's very famous for his service. And he's even free of old age and death. And he gets to carry the Lord everywhere. So Narada Muni went to Kimpurusha to see Hanuman. And there Hanuman is worshipping a deity of Ramchandra. So Kimpurusha is part of the Bhumandala. There's the Bhumandala there. And we see Kimpurusha right next to Bharatvarsha, over the Himalayas. On the bottom is Kimpurusha. So that's one of the varshas on the bottom. So that's where Hanuman resides. And he's worshipping Ramchandra there. So, Narada Muni came back from Sutaloka, came up to Bhuloka, and went to Kimpurusha. So, Narada saw Hanuman and begins to praise him. And of course, Hanuman was very overjoyed to see Narada Muni, and he jumped up in the air to embrace him. And Narada Muni began to praise Hanuman. You're the Lord's servant, his friend, his carrier, his asan or seat, his flag, dvaja, his umbrella, his canopy, his fan, Actually, with his tail, he fans the Lord. You are his bard, you sing his glories, advisor, his doctor, because he brought medicine, his general, who leads the army, his best helper, expander of infinite glories. So he began to praise Hanuman. And all this is actually true. He was a very great servant of the Lord. But then Hanuman also refused the praise. He says, you're actually making me embarrassed by all of this, because actually I'm very wretched. I don't have the lotus feet of Ramchandra. The Lord has rejected me. He's neglected me because he's not here. I have a deity of Ramchandra, but he's not here. I'm all alone. So as the Pandavas are the object of the Lord's mercy, he's always with the Pandavas. He's not with me directly. So the Pandavas are the best recipients of the Lord's mercy. Such that the Lord acts as their servant, advisor, messenger, charioteer, court attendant, watchkeeper at night, follows them around in procession, offers them praise and obeisance. So they get so much mercy that the Lord reverses the role. He becomes the servant of the devotee. He's constantly with the Pandavas. So they're the best devotees. So, next chapter, he goes to the Pandavas. So he leaves Kimpurusha and he comes back to Bharatvarsha, and he goes to Hastinapur to meet the Pandavas. So he sees the Pandavas and begins to praise Krishna as the source of all the forms. All the other forms are his amsas. And the Pandavas are the recipients of the Krishna's mercy. And he quotes some verses to show that the Pandavas are dear to the Lord. A friend of the Pandavas is my friend, and their enemy is my enemy. The Pandavas are my very life heirs. So this is a statement by Krishna himself. So it must be very, very dear. But the Pandavas and Yudhishthira and all the others deny that praise. We're suffering. All of our friends have perished. Krishna is not constantly with us also. Of course, in the Bhagavatam, we see he comes to them and then he leaves. Yeah? And then when he leaves, they're all saying, you can't go, you have to stay. Kunti offers their prayers, etc. So the Lord comes and he goes away. Krishna's with the Yadus constantly, not with us. So they're the greater devotees. So, of course, all of this is just extended dialogues between these. I haven't put all the details, and it's very interesting. But Narada then goes to Dwarka to see the Yadus because Krishna is there constantly. And he praises the Yadus, and it says their abode is like Vaikuntha itself. So the Yadus say, no, Krishna goes away. Sometimes he's not here also, he goes away. And we see him in the morning when he comes into the assembly, and then he disappears back into his palaces with his queens. So we don't see him all the time either. And he also goes out of here, he goes to other places as well. We don't know where he goes, but he leaves. But he's always with Uddhava. Uddhava is going everywhere with him. So he's greater than we are. Of course, he's also a Yadu, but he's the greatest because he's with the Lord constantly. So he gets the most mercy. So the Uddhava is so great that the Lord personally sends him on missions like rescuing Samba. And of course he was also sent by Krishna to deliver a message to the gopis, which is very high actually. So he definitely is very intimate. He attends on the Lord all times. He directly takes his mahaprasadam after Krishna eats. He takes all the food and eats it. He massages his feet. And even looks like Krishna. So therefore, he is the greatest recipient of the Lord's mercy. So, chapter 6, Narada goes to visit Uddhava. And where's Uddhava? He is there with the queens, Balaram, and Padmavati, that was Kamsa's mother. And they're all waiting for Krishna to wake up. why Krishna is not getting up that day. Waiting for them, then Uddhava hints a little bit that the gopis are the dearest of all, because he obviously saw the gopis in Vrindavan, so Uddhava understands that they're much greater than the Yadus and himself also. So he begins to give that hint to Narada. So Rukmini begins to describe Krishna's condition in sleep. And she says that actually when he's sleeping, he's dreaming of Raja, Vrindavan. He's dreaming of all the people there, particularly the gopis. Eventually, Krishna does wake up. He doesn't really want to because he's dreaming of Raja, but he wakes up. And then he regrets that he cannot repay the people of Vrindavan, and they're in such pain. So he begins to ask everyone there, what should we do for the people of Raja? And they all give different answers. And then they're also a little afraid because Krishna will leave them, so they don't want to say you should go back to Vrindavan, because then he'll stay there and he won't come back to Dwarka. So they don't want to say that. Various persons give various recommendations. And then finally Uddhava says that actually we can't pacify them really. They only want Krishna. Ultimately Krishna has to be with them. Unless your 2 lotus feet made a blessed journey to Vraja, there's no way to assure that your people of Vraja will survive. Those people want nothing but your lotus feet. And Balaram says, the devotees who relish the nectar of your names cannot die of starvation. Instead, their end will come in a dry fire of separation. So, in other words, both of them are saying that the people of Vrindavan cannot survive unless Krishna goes back. So, when all this conversation about Vraja occurs, then Krishna and Balaram begin to cry, and then everyone else also begins to cry. So there's a big confusion. All the Yadus are crying in the palace. So, this is the final chapter of this section. So, then Brahma hears all of this crying. And he appears along with all the Devatas and the Vedas to see what the problem is. And then he gives a suggestion. And so, and of course, Krishna and Balaram, Krishna's fainted still. He faints ultimately. So Brahma tells Garuda to take Krishna and Balaram with Rohini to a place called Nava Vrindavan, which resembles Vrindavan without the inhabitants, but all the, looks like the river there, the trees, the peacocks, and everything there, which Vishvakarma has created. It's near Dwarka. So he says you take Krishna and Balaram there, along with Rohini, because Rohini also came from Vrindavan and she's very familiar with that place. So you take them there. So Krishna still fainted, and he's in a fainting, unconscious state. Balaram decorates Krishna with a flute and a flower garland. So, and then he wakes him up when they get to this place, this new Vrindavan, Nava Vrindavan. So Krishna wakes up, and then he thinks he's in Vrindavan. He's got his flute there, he's got a garland on, he sees his cows there, and even there's Mother Yasoda and statues, of course. The statues of Mother Yasoda and Nanda, and even Radha is there waiting, and Mother Yasoda has some food in her hand like this, and when Krishna wakes up, then he thinks he's in Vrindavan, and he begins talking to Nanda and Yasoda and Radha, and he's so excited he doesn't know that the statues even. So yeah, then he's very eager to go out and herd the cows, and he wants to gather all the cowherd boys and run off into the fields. So then he goes off, and then he sees the ocean, and he thinks it's the Jamuna. But then he sees these huge waves coming in. And then he looks in the distance, he sees a big city over there. And there's Dwarka over there. He says, how can this be? So then Krishna comes back to his regular consciousness. At least they got him out of his fainting spell. and they got him awake. So then Balaram begins to remind them you still have some duties to perform. You have to kill some demons, etc. So you have to stay here and remain in proper consciousness. Don't faint again, because you have to fulfill your promise to restore dharma and get rid of adharma, etc. So Krishna recovers and then he kind of accepts his position. He has to do his duty. So then Krishna explains why he cannot return to Vrindavan anyway, because they were afraid, he's going to go away and then he's not come back. So then he explained that actually he cannot go there, and that's why he stays in Dwarka. So he says, even if I go back, they'll still have pain. Because if I go there, then they'll be afraid that I'm going to leave again. And so it's not going to solve the problem if I go there. They're always going to be afraid, and they'll be in more pain because of that. And if they can't see me for a little bit of time even, they will get such fire separation that they'll be very disturbed. So, as we see when Krishna disappeared for a short period of time during the Ras Leela, all the gopis went insane. They went into a type of madness. So Krishna says, even if I go back and I just disappear for a little bit, then they'll go into this madness again. So it's not going to solve the problem. If they see a patch of darkness resembling my complexion, they embrace it and kiss it, mistaking it for me. What more can I describe? Therefore, my staying with them would be equal to my absence. Realizing this, I have not returned there. So, in this way, he's glorifying the people of Vrindavan and, of course, ultimately the gopis. So, Krishna is most attached to them. Now, Narada Muni came, he was looking for the greatest recipient of the Lord's mercy, and he got up to Yadus and then to Uddhava. But then he saw that Krishna was actually, even though he was in Dwarka, he was not thinking of those devotees there, or even Uddhava, he was thinking of the people of Vrindavan. So that means the people of Vrindavan are the greatest devotees, the recipients of the Lord's mercy, even if he's not there. He's with the Yadus, but actually he's thinking of Vrindavan. So they have the most attraction to him, he has the most attraction to them. He's always thinking of them, and particularly of the gopis. So Narada begins to pray, Krishna begins to praise Narada because Narada has helped him remember Vraja, because Narada was asking this question, who's the greatest recipient of the Lord's mercy? So in this whole Leela, Krishna has remembered Vraja more intensely. So he praises Narada Muni. So he says, you've done me a great favor because you helped me remember these people. So though it appears that the people of Vrindavan, and particularly the gopis, are in the greatest sorrow and separation, it's explained here that actually that sorrow is not real sorrow. It's part of prema itself, highest bliss. When one is parted from those one loves, pure love makes one suffer within, as if from a blazing forest fire. The burning pain creates a remorse that further deepens into irrepressible sorrow. Thus one at first seems wretched. But then, this sorrow always transforms at last into an abundance of pleasure, which is praised as greater than the happiness of meeting, which is most indescribable, and which is pleasing to the mind. Only a person greedy for prema can understand that. So even in separation before meeting, they end up with the greatest bliss. And that bliss is greater than the bliss of meeting even. So then that sorrow which turns into bliss is the highest thing of all. So therefore separation of the gopis and the Vrajavasis is their greatest state of not only a sorrow, but of bliss as well. But this cannot be understood except for a person who is greedy for prema, one who's experienced prema. They can understand how this takes place, even if it looks contradictory. Those dear as life one can never forget, but when reminded of them in a special way, one feels happy, like one who has lived a life of good fortune. So Krishna feels that because he's been reminded of the people of Vrindavan, particularly the gopis, therefore he becomes very happy and he praises Narada Muni. So Narada Muni understood who were the greatest recipients of the Lord's mercy. So he was very joyful and he was playing on his veena and shouting Jai Jai, and he praised Krishna. He sang songs about the names of the Lord and the pastimes in Raja. So the Lord asked him to request, okay, I will give you some benedictions. So Narada's first request was constant mercy. So he didn't ask for himself, he asked for everybody else. Please grant that no one will ever feel he has enough of your mercy or devotional service or pure love, for you're the reservoir of ecstasy. In other words, that you should always give mercy to everyone. So then Krishna replied, of course, my mercy, my devotional service, and ecstatic love for me all have this nature. That should be obvious, so that the process of bhakti itself is full of mercy. The Lord is always giving mercy there. So it's not really a benediction, it's just a statement. So it's also not a request of Narada, it's only stating a fact that the mercy is always there in the Lord. And then he explains, the Lord explains that each of the devotees you saw, in other words, Krishna saw the brahmana, then he saw the king, then he saw Indra, then he saw Brahma, then he saw Shiva, then he went back and saw Prahlada, then he saw Hanuman, then he went to the Pandavas, then he went to Dwarka, then he saw Uddhava, etc. So I said, each of the devotees you saw and heard about in your wanderings here and there from Prayag to Dwarka is perfect in all respects. So though each one said, I'm not perfect, I'm not getting the Lord's mercy, in one sense, no, they are perfect. They have got the Lord's mercy. Each of them can deliver the entire world, and each has truly received my mercy. There exists between them only degrees of perfection. So there are degrees of mercy also, but they're all perfect. So there's more intense and less intense devotion and mercy. So then the second benediction is also not really a benediction, it's a statement. In other words, the knowledge of who has the most mercy. He should have the benediction. He already had it also. He understood it. My labors have borne fruit, for I now understand in a practical way who the objects of your greatest mercy are. I have directly realized now that the gopis are the greatest recipients of your mercy. So it's not really a benediction, it's just another statement. But in this doing so, he praises the gopis as being the highest recipients of mercy. And third benediction, preaching. I wish that may wander everywhere, always chanting, drinking the nectar of your names. Those most sweet names arise from the ocean of Gokul and spread the glories of your infinitely varied dress and ways of acting. As I wander, behaving like a madman, may I distribute joy to everyone in all the worlds. Of course, that's also in the benediction. He already has that benediction. He's already doing that. So, in this way, Narada Muni got his realization, so to speak, of the greatest recipients of mercy. And it concludes with the gopis. So, of course, we saw at the very beginning that in the Mangalachara, and there, Sanatana Goswami is talking about Lord Chaitanya and how he is conveying the love of the gopis to the people of the material world by taking that mood himself, because that's the greatest love. So here we find Narada Muni coming to that realization of what is the greatest, who are the greatest devotees. So then the sages at Prayag, Narada Muni returned, And then Narada Muni told the whole story of when he was searching for who had the most mercy. So the sages accepted that, and they understood what was the highest mercy of all, and they began to worship the lotus feet of Krishna according to Narada's instructions. So then we come to the outer story of Parikshit speaking to his mother, and she asked for the essence of what Sukadev Goswami had said. So then Parikshit gives an instruction to his mother. You as well should always worship, desiring to be a servant of these gopis, dedicating yourself to the sankirtan of his names. You should constantly worship in pure love as the gopis did. This young cowherd boy, an ocean that yields the nectar of the rasa dance, in which the divine gopis fully surround him, entranced by pure love. So he's instructing his mother that you should see that the gopis are the highest devotees. They got the highest love, and that this is actually the essence of all the instructions of Sukadev Goswami in the Bhagavatam. So it's a glorification ultimately of the gopis' love, and he's instructing his mother also to understand this and participate in such love. So that's the end of the first part of the Bhagavatam, the essence of mercy, finding the essence of mercy. So, any question there?
When does this episode of Parikshit Maharaj speaking with Uttara, his mother Uttara, happen? Because at the end of Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj is killed by the snake bird or dies from the snake bird. So when does it actually happen?
Must happen before that, obviously, somehow. Yeah. I don't know what the interval is, but somewhere in between there. He's speaking to his mother, so before his demise, obviously. So after Sukadev stopped speaking and before the demise, somewhere in between that.
This mercy that you are talking about, you get mercy because Krishna loves you or because you love Krishna?
It's reciprocal.
Reciprocal.
Yeah. The more intense you love the Lord, the more mercy you get. So as was explained here by Krishna himself, he said all these devotees actually are perfect in one sense because they're all devotees and they're all, like whether it's Shiva or Brahma or Prahlada or Hanuman, they're all perfect and they all serve in their particular way. And the Lord responds to that and they're all satisfied with it. But there's degrees also of intensity even in perfection. So all those persons, whether it's the Pandavas or the Yadus or Uddhava, whatever, the highest in intensity are the people of Vrindavan. They're the most intense love, and therefore Krishna responds to them the most. And among all those in Vrindavan, the gopis are the highest. So Krishna responds to them the most, and he surrenders to them the most. Even though they're all perfect and they all have prema. So there's degrees of intensity in prema also.
But then in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1869, he says, there's no servant more dear to me than one who bows and preaches. He seems to be the most dearest. How do we reconcile
all these devotees are also preaching, and the gopis are also preaching. So we find that the gopis are also doing sankirtan all the time. They're also glorifying the Lord at all times. You see Narada Muni is doing this also. So all the great devotees are also glorifying the Lord. It may not be like we preach, distributing books on the street, but they're all preaching in some way or other. Of course, in the spiritual world, there's no fallen soul anyway. But still, the preaching goes on there in the form of glorifying the Lord in Sankirtan.
So what are the symptoms of a person who receives mercy?
How much mercy though?
Yeah.
All these got mercy, but then we get to the highest mercy of the gopis. Obviously they're completely dedicated, and then when they separate from the Lord, there's this what looks like great pain. So the higher the devotee is, then the more they will show that pain.
But it's actually not pain because they also get the greatest joy.
Mm.
And one of their symptoms is their kirtan.
Mm.
That they glorify the Lord also in the pain or in the joy. They're glorifying the Lord. But that's also described in the second part where it says the gopis are always singing about Krishna. That's one of their symptoms.
So in the Bhagavad Gita, you also say, they always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer. In that way, you get mercy from the Lord.
Yeah. Well, that's sadhana. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. But in prema, then the same really applies again. Of course, they're always thinking of the Lord, but some are thinking more intensely,
Mm.
and therefore their symptoms are more intense also. And then the Lord responds with His intensity of love to them also.
Mm.
This feeling of separation,
Mm.
the ecstasy that's felt through that, is it kind of did Krishna design it that way because he knew that we wouldn't always be able to be together?
Well, I would think because love itself has the two aspects, meeting and separation, in any case. Even though we may think that, well, the perfect state is always meeting, but then separation is part of the experience of love. And within that, then one gets a higher experience of love also than in the meeting, as is explained here, and therefore a greater joy. So therefore, that separation is also part of the eternal pastimes, that they would separate, and through that get a higher experience of love.
Here we see that everyone, when they are praised by Narada Muni, saying that they have received the Lord's mercy, they say, no, I have not received any mercy at all. Is it wrong to feel that one has received the Lord's mercy?
Well, the nature of getting the Lord's mercy is you feel the lowest.
Yes.
And therefore you deny that I'm actually the recipient of the Lord's mercy. And in the second part, then it's explained that the gopis are the highest devotees, but they're also the most humble, and they think themselves the lowest and most unqualified of all. And therefore say, we're not the Lord's recipients of the Lord's mercy at all. We're lower than everybody else. That's what they'll think. The higher you go, the more humble you become. So that's a quality of prema also, and particularly the gopis love, that they feel that, you know, they're absolutely the lowest of all.
Compared to Bhagavatam, how many verses does this thing have, this Bhagavatamrita?
Oh, well, I guess it's, if you take the whole Bhagavatam, it's not as big as that.
Okay.
But it's certainly larger than a lot of the other works, I think, yeah? It's quite extensive. Can't say how many verses exactly, but it is quite big.
So it's more like a commentary on the Bhagavatam, is it? It's more like a commentary on the Bhagavatam?
Well, it's two stories, basically. The story of Narada Muni, which culminates in realizing that the gopis are the greatest recipients of love. And then the second story is the story of Gopi Kumar, who goes to various places and finally he's satisfied when he meets Krishna in Vrindavan. And then again, that concludes in the same way, the gopis are the highest again. And through that again, of course, obviously, Parikshit's answer to Uttara again is there that, you know, the people of Vrindavan and the gopis love is the highest. In spite of the fact that Gopakumar is not in Madhurya Rasa, he's in Sakya Rasa, which is interesting also. Okay, finish. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Maharaj ki
Jai.